Cuts, it's Mike. Joining me as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom, on this Memorial Day holiday?
Greetings and salutations, soldiers and everyone involved with the military. Obviously, I'm not a military guy, and I've never been a military guy, but I do appreciate everything that the volunteers and the armed services do. So yes, a very happy Memorial Day. And how the hell are you doing, Mike?
Doing well. I went to make a Costco run earlier, only to find out they actually let their employees off on Memorial Day, so I quickly had to go to a different grocery store. It's actually kind of like it's one of those things where it's like it was inconvenient for me, but actually kind of good as a company, I guess, that they give their employees the day off, because I didn't realize it. I mean, most places that sell food, like retail and stuff, are open on most holidays anyway, but so I guess that's me finding out that they were not open. Next up, we got Don with us. What's up, Don and Ellie?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here. And as you know, Venom was alluding earlier, thank you for your service.
Cool. All right. So this episode, we had a week off from theatrical releases. Unfortunately, while I really dug Furiosa, not a horror movie, so we will not be covering that on Fresh Cuts. But what we did decide, we had like a small handful of movies to choose from, and I think we almost went with this one just because of like the short runtime. It being a holiday weekend, we're all busy to varying degrees, so it was an easier one to kind of fit in, running just under 90 minutes at an hour and 26 minutes. And it's called Monster, and it's currently on Netflix, so it's another case that we didn't have to dig to find it, and most people should have access to it. So the synopsis off IMDb: Alana and Raveen, two friends who were kidnapped by a monster with no other choice. They had to fight by any means necessary. Now, I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say, monster is not literal monster in the way we're thinking. I mean, that's pretty much discovered at the beginning of the movie. So otherwise, if there would have been some type of reveal or something, I probably wouldn't have even qualified anything like that. But this movie is Indonesian. So yeah, subtitles. Hopefully none of our listeners mind. I mean, it's becoming
You've
pretty
been listening
norm,
to us for this long. Get used to it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so Monster. Let's get our general thoughts first, as usual. Venom, I'll kick it to you. What did you think of the movie Monster?
Man, this was a complete surprise to me. I knew nothing about this movie going in. I didn't really have high hopes when I read the synopsis. And then when you actually tune into Netflix and you see the thumbnail for the movie, the thumbnail actually says this movie has no dialogue. So instantly I started to get a little worried, thinking that it was going to be kind of a high art piece, like an art house, something with a weird narrative. But no, this is a fairly cut and dry movie. It's got a beginning, middle, and end. And my friends, I fucking loved this movie. I had an absolute blast with this movie. This movie is tense from beginning to end. And I think the lack of dialogue actually helps that tension. Obviously, once our two protagonists are kidnapped, they're obviously trying to be quiet while they're trying to, or at least one of them who is able to break their bonds is able to, traverse the house, kind of assess the situation. I just had a great time with this movie. This was an hour and 26 minutes of just tension beginning to end. Absolutely loved it. I love the story. The story is very believable, even though it's a very thin story. Our movie opens with our two protagonists being kidnapped by an unnamed assailant, and the movie just kind of goes from there. But man, this movie took some turns that I did not see coming. It made some decisions that I didn't think it would make that I highly agree with. I will say that maybe the ending is slightly lackluster only because of the involvement of the police, which, obviously in a horror movie, most people would rather avoid police interaction. It tends to add a sense of reality to a movie that maybe we don't necessarily need. But this movie is very grounded in reality. Kids get kidnapped all the time, kids disappear all the time, and this is something that's probably very close to a lot of people's hearts, especially parents, a fear that they have. But I thought that this movie was great. Great performances. I think the two kids are both great. Obviously, one of them gets the lion's share of the screen time over the other one, but I thought they were both great. I think our antagonist was really, really well the performance was really well done. I'm going to try to be as ambiguous as possible on the antagonist because, ultimately there's not too much spoilery stuff to talk about with this movie. It's a fairly cut and dry, two victims up against their assailant just trying to survive the night, blah, blah, blah. So, but like I said, it's a quick movie. It gets right into it right away. There's no waiting. There's no character development. Like I said, this movie is free of dialogue. There is some vocalizations in the film. Obviously, the two kids will call out to each other throughout the film, but there's no legitimate dialogue, no exchange of words with any two or more characters. So yeah, absolutely no dialogue. Just, some expletives every now and again, not I don't mean like swears necessarily, but like I said, some whimpers, some groans, some calling out to I thought these kids were siblings too. That's kind of funny that the synopsis says that they're just friends, which is fine. I mean, it's not like the movie implies that they're brother and sister. Just the mere fact that they went to school together and they rode the same bike together to the arcade after school. I don't know. I had especially in a foreign country, it just kind of felt like it was a sibling situation, but obviously not siblings, which makes me question one of the girl's decisions in the film, only because if it was her sibling, it would have made a lot more sense. But at the same time, when you're kids, your friends are everything to you. So I guess I'm looking into it a little bit too much. We'll talk about that later on during the walkthrough. But yeah, like I said, small cast. It's basically just, your protagonist, your antagonist, one single location with maybe some property surrounding it as well once they actually get out of the house. For what this movie is, I absolutely loved it. I know it's a very simple movie. It's not going to make everyone happy. Obviously, the lack of explanation is probably one of the things that a lot of people are going to be kind of upset about. Like, why is the antagonist doing the things that he's doing? Like, what is the motivation? We see, throughout traversing, as the characters are traversing the house, we see different things that maybe support different theories. Like, we see a room that makes it look like, oh, this is a sex slave, slave trades type situation. But then we see another room that almost makes it implies it's an organ harvesting ring, like an organized crime, getting illegal organs from victims, things like that. Then there's other things in it that make it seem like it's almost like a pedophilia dark web type thing, where maybe people are paying to watch these events. So, but we get no real explanation as to what our antagonists, like what their end game is. Why are they doing the things that they're doing? We don't see any money exchange, anything. So, but having said all that, in the context of this movie, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what these people are doing. Are they pedophiles? Are they cannibals? Are they sociopaths? Are they organ harvesters? it doesn't matter. They're just evil. The movie title implies it. Monster. They are absolutely the monsters of this film. But like I said, that's about the only real question that I was left with as the movie ends. But ultimately, because of the events of the end of the movie, it doesn't matter. It has no context on the bearing. It has no bearing on the events of the movie. So it's just one of those things that kind of left me scratching my head like, man, they leave so many little clues and so many red herrings, but then you don't actually get that explanation. Which, like I said, it's going to bother some people. It might even bother some people on this show. But to me, it didn't bother me so much as it was just something that popped up in my head as the movie ended. But yeah, overall, I'm going to say in general, I love this movie. I had a really good time with it. This is an instant top 10 candidate to me. Great. And the score, God, this score is amazing. There's a scene in this film where the antagonist is, it's not much of a spoiler, but I'll just say it. He's dismembering one of his victims, and the music that's playing in the background is orchestral and gorgeous and counteracts with what we're actually with the visuals of that scene. I thought it was so well done. And then for the rest of the movie, I really noticed the score. So beautiful score, decent cinematography, good direction, great performances on both sides of the fence, antagonist and protagonist. Overall, I love this movie. It's a surprise. Like I said at the beginning of my review, it just came out of nowhere. I knew nothing about this, and instantly it becomes a top 10 candidate. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. It's not going to work for all horror fans, and I am aware of this. It's definitely something. I am a fan of tension and tone and atmosphere, and I feel like this movie had all of that in spades, without delving into gore fest stuff. It's not a very bloody movie. It's not by any stretch of the imagination is it gory. I mean, you could make the argument this is a PG-13 movie, really, other than maybe some language that's exchanged. Language, expletives, like I said, an occasional expletive, but otherwise, because it could have easily been a PG-13 movie, and I'm on board for it. I can't praise this movie enough. I had a really good time with it. I'm not necessarily saying this is a 10 out of 10 perfect film, not by any stretch. It has its issues, which we'll talk about in the walkthrough. But overall, this has been the surprise of 2024 for me. Like, just knowing nothing about this, and now it's an instant best of the year candidate. So yeah, I'll leave my general thoughts at that and say I love this and I highly recommend this one. Check it out. Back to you, Mike.
All right, cool. We'll throw it over to Don. General thoughts on Monster?
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I thought the plot synopsis sounded familiar, and come to find out, it's actually a remake of another film that I watched. I want to say it was 3 or 4 years ago. I thought it sounded familiar when we first brought it up, and then looking back, it was a remake of a film called No One Lives Inside, or something similar to that. I don't remember exactly, but I remember watching it like 3 or 4 years ago. Not horror enough for me. I thought it was more of a suspense thriller, so I don't really remember much else beyond that. But I do have to say, I do like this one a little bit more. I thought it was a little bit better handled with how the relationship handles. Again, I'm not entirely familiar if they're brother and sister or friends. It seems a little like both could be plausible, and I don't know for sure. But if the film says they're friends, I'll go with friends. But I don't know for sure, so I'm not saying much. But I do like the bond that they have, the relationship that they develop over the course of the film, the encounters that they have throughout the house. When what goes on inside, there's a ton of tension involved. But my main thing is that this feels very much exactly like No One Will Save You, which was another film that came out last year, I think. The one from, was this one, that one Hulu, the alien abduction one that was also silent? That one was Hulu, that was right? Hulu. Okay, yeah, it feels very much like that, where the no dialogue feels fine at first, and then it just wears out its welcome by like the half-hour mark. And it really just feels like this could have been shortened down into an anthology and just left it, like a 30, 40-minute short. And that's kind of the impression I get here, where, especially with what Venom said, not having any confirmed motivation for what's going on, because you get bits and pieces here and there. There's 3 or 4 different explanations you can come up with just based off of the visual evidence if you're paying hard enough attention. But yeah, I just need this. I'm a simple American. I need my things explained to me, and no dialogue means nothing's explained. And to me, I just felt like it was a gimmick that wore out its welcome. And frankly, I'm not a fan of gimmicks in the first place. I'm not a fan of PG 3D films. I'm not a fan of I absolutely abhor silent films. I can't stand them. The original silent films are like pre-30s. I cannot watch any of those because they just feel like gimmicks to me. And I know that they're not, but that's just the way that they feel. And that's just the way I feel about this one. No dialogue. It's insanely hard for me to pay attention and get invested when there's nothing there drawing me in. And for as tense as it is, for as fantastic as the confrontations are, I do agree. The technical quality for this one here is fantastic. I mean, I do recognize the score because there's nothing else here in the way of, getting in the way of everything. But yeah, just the presentation of it and the gimmick, it wore out its welcome for me. And 35, 40 minutes in, I was like really ready to just like, can we move on with this and get something here? And yeah, it kind of just lowered it for me just because I'm not a fan of it, and it just makes it feel like a gimmick, and I'm not a fan of that. But for every other thing else about it, I loved it. I really enjoyed where it was going. I like the setup. I like the premise, the way that the way that they have to navigate their way through the house. I think it's all handled incredibly well. Yeah, okay, you can probably nitpick it, and like if you were going to scrutinize decision making minute by minute throughout the course of the film, okay, yeah, you can probably maybe question 1 or 2 decisions, how long they stay inside and all that. But yeah, I don't think it matters. If I think the main thing here is that if you can get past the dialogue, the no dialogue, the no explanation, and just treat it almost like a real-time kind of a film where it happens and you can't really do much about it, I think that will make it work the best. But yeah, for the most part, I really can't see me returning to this. I really can't see me changing much on this, just because of the way that the presentation is kind of, it just hits marks for me that are my own personal preference. But for the most part, I would still say give it a watch. I mean, you can, if you can get past everything, you're going to enjoy it. I just think the presentation is going to be the biggest stumbling block. And if you can get past it, you're going to be good. If you can't, you're probably just going to be pulling tooth and nails waiting for it to finish, regardless of how short it is. But for it to be personal preferences instead of, genuine actual flaws, I think should speak more highly than what I say about it. That your feelings for how the film is presented to you is the only drawback in a film like this. I think that's more worthwhile than anything else. So, take it from there. But I don't really have much else to add. So back to you, Mike.
All right. For me, I did enjoy this one. Up front, I'll say like my main thing. I was waiting for like one of you to possibly say like it's more on the thriller end of kind of that line between thriller and horror, which I would understand because basically once we get the setup to this movie, which happens within the first 10 minutes, that is basically what your movie is going to be. It's 2 kids get kidnapped, and most of the screen time is one of them trying to escape and help the other one escape as well. That is your setup, and that's what we get for 80 minutes of the 86 minutes, I think. So but with that said, I think that's what kind of helps me not be bothered with the lack of dialogue, because there's not really a bunch of story elements that get added. We do get like, you know, a few twists and turns. There's a character who I won't name that exits the movie way earlier than that kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting that. But other than that, like, it's a pretty straightforward story. They're not like metaphors and allegories going on. It's pretty much, hey, these kids got kidnapped and they're trying to get the hell out of there by any means necessary. I also think, like, you know, sometimes with, you know, jaded veteran horror fans, there might be people trying to nitpick at decision making, but again, I think this movie gets away with it because they're kids. Well, especially the kid that we spend most of the screen time with. I'm not going to fault a kid for not making the same decision as like an adult would, right? They have different things going on in their head during like traumatic experiences like this. They're probably not going to react the same way. You know, to Venom's point, I think once the movie gets going, it's pretty much nonstop intensity, like varying degrees through different parts, but we don't get a lot of downtime for the rest of the movie. And I like how it plays out. I like the score. I like the characters. You know, we don't get, like, I think it's already been mentioned by both my co-hosts, we don't get a ton of backstory about exactly why they've been kidnapped, but to me there's a few tidbits and scenes that, at least for me personally, like, everyone's gonna have a different threshold, but for me it gives me enough to know, like, do we get a exact, like, 100% this is what these kids are kidnapped for? No, but to me we get enough to at least paint a pretty good idea along the lines of, like, okay, this is probably what's going on, especially with like a couple things that one of the, I guess, villains you would call is doing. It looks like what his work is besides just the kidnapping himself, like what he has set up in the house, as far as like, and including like his interactions with a couple other characters throughout the movie, or at least one, I think. So to me, that gives me enough, because this is just one of those movies where it's very like on the nose and surface level. Like, this is what it is. We're not waiting for like 10 other layers of like the onion to be like revealed. And I think that's what helps it, because if it's going to be a simple story and we're not getting a ton more to it, then what do you want to do? You want to make it kind of nonstop. You want to pace it to where these characters are go. And there's also a couple things that happen in the movie that I think help justify the lack of dialogue, especially by our kidnapped victims here. There's a couple reasons why I think, at least on their parts, that they're not saying anything, which we can get into during spoilers. But I don't have much to add, because Venom pretty much said a lot of what I was going to say. Like I said, I don't feel like this is a movie there's a lot to dissect from unlike some other movies that, like, even if we didn't like, there's still like all this stuff to dissect. No, this is a pretty straightforward movie, and I think that's what gives us strength. And I think the performances are pretty good all around too. I mean, I guess one of the characters doesn't have to do a ton of performing through the whole movie for certain reasons, but everyone that is, like, on screen doing things for most of the movie, I think it was all great. I like the use of the camera work on certain part. Like, of course, like, you can see some camera shots, the way they're set up, the POV angles. It's like, okay, I see what you're doing there, camera, but I still think it's well executed and well done, and it makes for like a claustrophobic feeling. It's one of those movies you want to like really root for the kids. I mean, who's not going to root for kidnapped kids escape? That's low hanging fruit, I guess. But still, I think that's what the skill level of the director, and I did think the movie looked pretty good. Like, I can't imagine the budget on this was too high. So for whatever budget they did have, I thought it looked pretty good looking. And again, I'll say the score. The score helped with the intensity. And sometimes it's almost like a reverse psychology, where if a movie just gives you bits and pieces of like the horrendousness or the horrendous potential of what might eventually get done, it almost makes it that much more scary in your head because you see this piece, you see this item, and you can kind of put together in your head, and it just your head can run with like, oh my god, the potential, like what will happen to them if they don't get the hell out of there. Even though you might not 100% know, it's still good. Almost in the way of like reading a story. You tend to imagine what's going on in your head, and sometimes that makes it worse than like when you actually watch a movie version of it. But anyways, yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was kind of a shot in the dark on it, like I said, because we had some to choose from. So, hey, another winner with a short running time. I think that was like last year's gimmick, wasn't it? Like all the short runtime movies. But we got one this year, and it's on Netflix, so most people should be able to check it out. So I guess I'll leave my general thoughts there for now. So back to you, Venom.
I'm going to disagree slightly on your psychological horror point. In my opinion, this movie is solidly a horror film. From what I watched, the third act is basically the same as the third act of The Shining. I mean, this movie has Shining homages all over its third act. Literally, from the moment that one of the characters hides in a bathroom and that door gets chopped down with an axe, literally, I mean, that's obviously the biggest clue. But for the rest of the movie after that, it literally feels like Jack Torrance chasing Danny around the Overlook property. And I'm down for it. Some people might find that a little bit of a negative. Not me. The Shining is a top 3 horror film all time for me. So when I see Shining homages done well, I'm okay with it. I know a couple of years ago we did that movie about a haunted hotel that had a lot of Shining homages in it. I can't remember the title of it for the life of me. It was so fucking bad. But yeah, I just remember railing against that movie because of all of its Shining homages. And this one, I'm down for all of them. I loved it.
You know what's funny, Venom, is I actually agree with you in the sense that like the movie tonally it's horror enough for me. Like I would include it. I think I was just putting a general statement out there, but as far as like the Shining references or homage, when you start to see it happen and you're putting it together in your head, like that's what's going on here. I thought back to like the home screen on the movie where it says no dialogue, and for a second I was like, "Oh, are they gonna break the no dialogue just for this scene?" I was kind of curious because you see what's going on, and you're like, you think if there's any time in the movie it's gonna happen, it's gonna be during that, and they stick to the no dialogue. So I appreciate the homage, but not cheapening the fact that like they're going no dialogue. It was kind of like the best, or it was kind of like doing it legitimate in both ways. Like, here's your homage, but we're not going to break what our mission was with the movie in doing a homage. So I thought that was good.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like I said, once I saw that one bathroom scene, I was on board. I mean, I was on board for this whole movie. And yeah, ultimately, I love that there's no dialogue in this movie. It works for me. It heightened the tension, and the fact that there's a reason. That's the other thing, because there's movies like The Quiet Place that could have been dialogue free, and they would have had a reason. Now, obviously, they chose to do some dialogue to explain some stuff to the audience. This one, like I said, the fact that we don't really find out any of the motivations of the antagonists, to me, did not hinder my enjoyment of this film. Especially once the ending happens, and most people are going to walk away fairly satisfied with the ending. I know I did. So ultimately, yeah, no dialogue, no big deal. Obviously, I don't want to watch too many movies like this because I'm not quite as against gimmicks as Don is, though there are some gimmicks that I do rail against. 3D movies, like Don said, is one of those that I'm not the biggest fan of. I still will watch them if it's an Avatar movie, because that's one of just the aspects of the technical filmmaking is the 3D for Avatar. But like Godzilla versus Kong, the only reason I saw that in 3D is because I saw it 5 times in theaters. So I saw it in a different format every time. I saw it in Prime, I saw it in Dolby, I saw it in IMAX, I saw it in 3D. I wanted to hit every format possible, but that's just me in Godzilla movies. So that's definitely not the norm. But I am, like I said, I do understand Don's thing. If you need your dialogue, obviously, once you're 20-30 minutes into this movie, it starts to become a little bit of a drag for people like that. So totally understandable critique against the film. But for someone like me who is a big fan of slow burns, a big fan of atmosphere and tension, this one worked for me on every level. My God, I may watch this again like tomorrow. I really, really enjoyed this. Unfortunately, I had a fairly busy weekend, so I didn't get a chance to watch this a second time. I only watched it today for the first time, as it's Memorial Day, and unfortunately, my wife is one of those people that still has to work on holidays because she works in a hospital. So, of course, I had plenty of free time, and I wish she was home. I think she would have really enjoyed this movie too. There aren't many horror movies that Mrs. Venom really, really enjoys. Like, I can count on one hand the amount of new horror movies over the last few years that she actually enjoys. But I feel like this is one that really would have spoken to her, and I think she would have enjoyed it. But we'll see. I'll be rewatching it at the end of the year for the top 10 list anyway. So it's not like this will be the last time I watch this one. So, all right, folks, this is going to be your final spoiler warning. If you have not seen this film named Monster, please go ahead and pause the show. And if you're interested in seeing the movie, go ahead and watch it and come on back. If you have no interest in seeing it, or you've already seen it, go ahead and stick around with us and see if you agree with some of our points on some of the spoilers and plot points in the film. So let's go ahead and begin. Our movie opens with our two protagonists, Alana and Rabin. They, like I said, Indonesian kids. They're just getting out of school. It looks like they're wearing school uniforms, so it's got to be, some kind of parochial or Catholic school or something like that. They decide to go to the arcade after school. We see them on the same bike. It looks like it's Alana's bike. She's kind of driving, and Rabin is kind of on the back, on the pegs behind her. They get to the arcade, and literally within a couple of minutes of being at the arcade, Rabin walks out of the arcade and then kind of disappears for a few minutes. Alana ends up, and during all this, like during their walk to the arcade, we do see a nefarious figure in a luxury sedan following them at a very close distance. How they didn't notice this is beyond me, but whatever. And so, like I said, after Rabin kind of goes missing for a couple of minutes, Alana goes outside of the arcade to look for him. She ends up finding a guy closing his trunk, and there's something in the trunk kicking the trunk door. We could see it kind of jumping up and down. We can see the back end of the car shaking. I think Alana makes the realization of what's happening fairly quickly, because as soon as the adult gives chase, she goes ahead and runs away. She doesn't freeze in fear or anything. Unfortunately, he is able to get her, and he puts her in the trunk as well. So that's the setup of our film. Eventually, the driver, or the adult, takes the kidnapper. Let's say that the kidnapper takes the kids to an isolated location. It's a fairly nice house, pretty big, out in the middle of the woods. There's not really any neighbors or anything like that, so it's a nice isolated location for the killer/killers to do what they do. And what we see is we see the kidnapper grab Rabin, just the boy, out of the trunk, and he leaves Alana in the trunk, closes the trunk door behind him. And then what we see is we see him take Rabin upstairs to a room. We don't actually see him. We don't see him and Rabin walk into the room. Or should I say, we don't see the inside of the room. We see him open the door, walk through the door, close the door, and then the camera shot stays right there. And then what we see are flashes from a camera, and we can hear the whirring of like film advancing. It's one of those older SLR cameras. So obviously, he's kidnapping these kids and then taking pictures of them. So the first thing that we're thinking about is slave trade or sex trade. He's taking pictures to potentially show these pictures to potential buyers who may, take these kids. So that's all we got. No dialogue whatsoever in this one. After a couple of minutes, Alana ends up waking up in the trunk, and she kicks at the trunk until eventually she's able to actually get it open. A lot of people don't know this, but in later model luxury cars, you cannot get trapped in the trunk. There actually is a release in there. So they're working on, movie viewers' ignorance of this one, but ultimately I'll let it pass. So she gets out of the car. She's duct taped. She's blinded. She's got duct tape over her mouth, her eyes, and she's got her hands duct taped behind her back. So she's traversing this garage, but she's completely blind. Eventually, she falls down, and when she falls, she realizes that there's a sharp rock on the ground near her face. So she actually tries to maneuver her face over the sharp rock to try to break the duct tape on her face. She is able to slightly tear the duct tape over one of her eyes, so now she can see. So now she's looking around. She realizes that she's in a garage. She sees the car that she recognizes from earlier. Eventually, she finds a nail sticking out of the wall, so she's able to kind of back up to the nail and get the duct tape off her hand. Unfortunately, she does injure herself a little bit. Obviously, I can't imagine that's easy for any of us to do, to try to use a nail on a wall to get duct tape off of our hands, which are behind our backs. She is able to free herself from the duct tape, and she ends up getting out of the house. The garage door is basically locked with a chain, but the door opens just wide enough that a child can slip through there. So she gets through, and she starts running down the driveway like she's just going to escape. This is when I started to believe that this is actually her brother, because she stops, turns around, and stares at the house. And then she kind of thinks about Rabin, and she goes back in the house. She makes the decision to go back in the house. Now, obviously, as a horror fan, we're screaming at her, what the fuck are you doing? But at the same time, I thought that was her brother, so it would make sense that she would go back to save him. For a friend, most adults probably wouldn't go to that much trouble for a friend. But obviously, kids, friends are everything to kids at that age. So, of course, she's going to go back in and try to help them. Mm-hmm.
I actually originally thought they were siblings too, and then the main thing I can think of, like, to justify it, is I guess at that age it'd be kind of like harrowing to like, even if you were to escape by yourself, maybe she just thought like,
yeah,
either I need to go back because it's my friend, or I'm just afraid to like even take off by myself, because then I'll be alone by myself, like out there trying to like traverse the I don't want to say wilderness, but you know what I'm saying.
No, it's valid. Yeah,
right.
Definitely. I mean, because she has no idea where she is. I mean, she was blindfolded in a trunk. We have no idea how far that guy drove. Obviously, it's a movie, so they cut the scene. So, I mean, she could have been an hour away from home for all she knows, So, like I said, it's just I'm more questioning the bravery. Like, kids that young aren't usually that fucking brave, that they're willing to walk back into a house that they just escaped from a kidnapper. But again, you got to advance the plot, so I'll accept it. So anyway, Alana does end up going back in the house. And then for the next, 20 to 30 minutes, it's kind of a cat and mouse thing where she's hiding. The kidnapper doesn't realize that she's out of the trunk, obviously. Apparently, he was going to leave her in the trunk for however long until he was done with Rabin, doing whatever it was he was going to do with Rabin. But she's walking around the house. She's doing a really good job of avoiding him, avoiding detection. The CG cockroaches did kind of make me laugh. There's a scene in here where she hides in a cabinet in the kitchen, and we see all these CG cockroaches running around behind her. One of them crawls on her hand, and she's trying to swat the roaches off of her, but trying to be quiet at the same time too, because the kidnapper is right there, standing in front of her, making a cup of coffee. So yeah, you get some tense moments like that. I'm not going to go over every single cat and mouse moment necessarily, but just realize that there's a lot of them in this movie. Some of them way more clever than others too. Like I said, Alana may be a child, but as this movie goes along, she definitely makes some really good decisions later on. It's almost like we're almost watching Alana mature as we watch this movie, because she makes some very simple mistakes early on, but then later in the film, she makes some very adult decisions that I was applauding her for. So we'll get to those in a little bit. So like I said, eventually she finds the room that Rabin is being held in, but the room is locked. She's unable to get in there. She doesn't know where the key is. And this antagonist, man, this kidnapper is smart. He doesn't keep all his keys on one keychain. This guy's got to have about 5 different key rings all throughout the house that have different keys. Some are for doors, some are for entrances and exits to the house itself, some are for the car. Just, yeah, again, smart move, not keeping all your keys on one key ring. Way easier to get screwed over that way. So eventually what we see is the kidnapper gets a visitor. We hear a knock at the front door, and it's like, what the hell? Somebody's visiting, thinking it's an innocent person that's potentially about to get killed by this guy. But no, who's at the door? A biker, somebody wearing a motorcycle helmet and biker leathers, and he's holding like a cooler, like an igloo cooler. It's very obviously empty because of how light it looks, the way that they're able to kind of whip it around. The biker leaves the empty cooler with the kidnapper, and then the kidnapper hands the biker an envelope full of money. So I don't know. Again, this kind of almost makes it seem like it's maybe illegal organ trade, or again, something more nefarious going on than just a guy kidnapping kids and killing them. So the biker leaves, and we see the guy kind of look at the cooler. He looks inside. The cooler is empty. But then he decides, oh no, this is before the nap. Okay. He decides to drug Rabin, because Rabin, every time Rabin wakes up, he starts screaming again, like, let me out, blah, 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 crying, everything else. So eventually what the antagonist does is he grabs a couple of donuts and he puts something on them. We see him put some kind of powder on them. So, some kind of sedative or whatever the case may be, because later, after a few minutes, we do end up seeing Rabin in the room passed out with one of the donuts half eaten on the plate. So he's obviously been drugged specifically to keep him quiet. So basically after doing that, after drugging Rabin, he starts to realize that things in his house aren't where he left them. Not items, but like lights are on that shouldn't be on, doors are open that shouldn't be open. So he starts to kind of search through the house, still doesn't realize that Alana's loose, mind you. He's just kind of checking to see, did I do this? Did I leave these doors open? Blah, blah, blah. Or is there somebody in my house? Alana realizes that the kidnapper is searching for her, so she ends up walking into this room it's a bedroom, and it's actually very nice. It's very nicely decorated. It's not bloody. There's no body parts or weapons or anything. It looks like a very upscale, nice bedroom. But there's a camcorder on a tripod pointing at the bed. So again, as horror fans, our gears are grinding, and we're like, oh, what are these people actually doing here? So anyway, once the kidnapper realizes, and the kidnapper's name is Jack, so I'm just going to start calling him Jack. We find out later in the film that the kidnapper's name is Jack, but so I'm just going to call him Jack. So Jack the kidnapper starts walking towards that room. Alana can hear this is obviously an old house with hardwood floors. Alana can hear Jack coming towards the room, so she goes to try to hide under the bed, but she ends up finding a dead body. Yes, there is a dead body of another child, a boy, underneath the bed. And in Alana's credit, man, she doesn't scream, she doesn't freak out. She very quietly pushes the body back under the bed, and then gets under the bed with the dead body and uses the same cover, like the blanket or sheet, whatever, that's on the dead body. She gets under that as well. So then we see Jack, the kidnapper, walking into that room, realizing that the lights are on, even though he didn't leave them on. So he's searching throughout the room. When he walks in, first he searches like an armoire, like a closet, one of those standing closets for clothing. He looks in there, doesn't find anything. Then he looks under the bed, which obviously as the viewer, we start freaking out because we're thinking, shit, Alana's under there. Luckily, he looks under the bed on the side of the bed where the body is closest. So Alana is on the opposite side of the body from where Jack is looking. He looks under there. He sees the body that he obviously left there earlier. Doesn't see anything moving or breathing. So then he moves into the bathroom. That particular bedroom has an attached bathroom. While he's in the bathroom, Alana comes out from under the bed, and this is one of those decisions that I applaud Alana for. She saw that Jack searched that armoire first when he walked in. So after Jack goes into the bathroom, she comes out from under the bed and hides in that armoire that he's already checked. Again, Alana's starting to make some good decisions here. Jack comes out of the bathroom. He looks under the bed again. He almost like he's not convinced that he thoroughly looked under the bed. So he ends up looking under the bed again, pulling the dead body out, pulling the sheet off of it to, make sure that it's not Alana pretending to be a dead body. And finally, he's like, okay, I guess that's it. But while he's in that room, I guess he decides to just take that dead body and take it down to the basement. And Alana, of course, follows him down there. And what we see is the killer grab a chainsaw and dismember this dead kid's body. Yes, unceremoniously dismember this body. Obviously, we see nothing. As we all mentioned earlier, this movie is not really relying on kills or gore or anything like that. So he ends up chopping up the body into pieces and then throwing the pieces into the empty igloo cooler that was dropped off by the biker earlier. And then we just get a quick flash of the cooler as he's closing it, and we see that there's body parts in there. We don't see a head or anything, just like arms and legs and whatnot. Obviously, I guess they're trying not to make it too over-the-top gory with like severed heads and things like that. And then a few minutes later, the doorbell rings again. Or there's another knock on the door, I should say, outside. And Jack, the kidnapper, takes the cooler that now has the body parts of that kid that Alana had found under the bed, and he hands the cooler back to the biker. The biker grabs the cooler, takes it, and leaves. And as he leaves, we see Jack kind of wave, sarcastically waving at the cooler like he's saying bye to the little kid. And then that's the last time we see the biker. Literally a mystery character that we have no idea who the fuck he is, what he works for, what he's doing with these body parts. Does he work for Jack? Like, is that Jack's like disposal guy? Or is he selling these parts to the guy to then be used for something else later? Again, it's completely ambiguous. It's up to the viewer. Whatever explanation you come up with, it's going to be right in your head. So go with it. All right. So at this point, and I forgot to mention that earlier in the movie, Jack got a phone call from someone named Mumi, M-U-M-I, Mumi. And again, no dialogue is exchanged. He answers the phone and he just listens to what's being said on the phone. Obviously, as the viewer, we don't hear it. He hangs up the phone and then he sets a 1-hour timer on his stopwatch. He does this earlier in the film. And then about halfway through the 1-hour time duration, that's when the biker comes back to pick up the cooler with the body parts in it. So I thought that he was, signifying, oh, this is when the biker's going to be back to pick up the parts. But no, the biker was back with more than a half hour still left on the timer. At this point, Jack decides to take a nap. He looks at his timer. He realizes he has about a half hour until the timer goes off. So he decides to take a nap. He lays down on the couch and tries to fall asleep, but then he realizes that the big ring of keys in his pocket is making him uncomfortable. He's not able to sleep comfortably. So he takes the keychain out of his pocket and puts it on the coffee table right in front of him. Then he falls asleep, and Alana, who's been hiding behind the couch this entire time, realizes that Jack is finally asleep. So she gets up and she grabs the keys to try to get out of the house. Unfortunately, as she grabs the keys, Jack wakes up, grabs her hand. They have a little bit of a struggle back and forth. She ends up going back to the kitchen to try to go out the door that she came in. After she first initially escaped out of the car door, she broke a window to get back into the house to try to help her friend. But when she went back to that door, it was locked at the top. There was like a little latch lock that she couldn't reach, that only an adult would be able to reach. It was at the top of the door. So the killer obviously he's got some smarts himself. We already mentioned about the key, not keeping all the keys on the keychain. It seems like everybody in this movie is fairly intelligent. So after this, there's a struggle. Of course, he chases Alana throughout the house. Alana eventually is able to get a knife out of a drawer in the kitchen. And they actually have like a fucking old-fashioned standoff. Like literally, like this guy is not a very proficient killer because he doesn't seem like he's very skilled with his weapons. He pulls out a very small pocket knife, like a folding pocket knife, while Alana is holding like a big ass, kitchen butcher knife. They end up kind of going at it, taking swings at each other. Alana ends up cutting him on the arm, hurting him really bad. And then she she grabs the pot of boiling water and throws it in his face. Unfortunately, the water isn't boiling anymore. It's cooled down to room temperature. So Jack actually laughs at her after she throws the water at him. But then she starts trying to beat him with the pot itself, with the hot water pot. They end up kind of getting into a lock where they're holding each other's hands so that one can't stab the other. And then Alana eventually gets out of the kind of the lock and starts to run away out of the kitchen. Jack follows suit, but he slips on the water that Alana threw in his face. He slips on the water, hits his head against the counter, falls down, and he's out cold. Now, obviously, as a seasoned horror fan, I'm yelling at Alana, stab that guy in the neck 50 times while he's out cold. But obviously, again, Alana's a kid. She's not just going to, out of nowhere, decide to just start killing somebody. She doesn't understand that if he wakes up, she's dead. Kids don't have that sense of finality of, if I don't get out of this situation, he is going to kill me, period. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But what she does is she, while he's out cold, she grabs his phone, trying to, see if she could unlock it. Unfortunately, she's not able to unlock it. She didn't even try the Face ID thing, which I think a lot of people end up using, that Face ID to unlock their phone. She didn't even try it, but whatever, no big deal. But then she puts the phone back in his pocket, which I thought was a weird decision. I'm thinking to myself, no, don't let him have his phone. He might be able to call backup or something. But again, Alana's a child. She checks his other pocket and finds a set of keys, and she starts to get excited. Oh, good. I'll be able to, go let Rabin out. But then at that moment, Jack wakes up and he sits up. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, fortunately for Alana, when he sits up, she had the knife up and pointed straight out. So he literally sat up and literally impaled himself on the knife. It wasn't even really Alana being aggressive with it. He just sits up and sits right up into the knife. And at this point, obviously anybody who's seen a horror... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I kind of like the way that went down because it's obviously if it's one-on-one with both of them in the right mind, that's probably not going to happen, but the circumstance helped. And you get the idea, well, I could have stopped you earlier to say it, but definitely by this part in the movie, my guess is that it's some type of organ harvesting operation. And what helps also the believability of the situation is this guy's probably on one of the lowest rungs of this whatever greater organization is doing this. This guy's the grunt, right? He's not the professional that's armed with weapons that can eliminate a threat immediately if something comes up. He's definitely kind of just the grunt guy that probably goes, gets the people, holds on to them, and does the dirty work, so to say. So if he ever found himself in a struggle, he's not the best equipped. But the way his death happens, it's a little more believable than if they were facing off against each other for it to happen. Yeah. So I thought it was justified.
Yeah, the unbelievable aspect of this scene is the fact that Jack actually dies from this wound. A single stab to the midsection, not the heart, not the liver, not the kidney, literally center belly. So they probably didn't even hit any major organ.
Yeah.
And, how many people have died from a single stab wound? That's craziness.
Well, definitely the short amount of time, because you could argue that if a stab to the abdomen, if you don't ever receive medical attention, maybe slowly you would bleed out over time. It's definitely the frequency, how quick he just kind of falls over and dies. That would be definitely the less believable part.
Exactly. So at this point, Jack is perceivably dead. I'm not gonna fuck with it. He actually is dead. He's gone at this point. There's no jump scare. He doesn't come back. He's gone, and now Alana is stuck in this house with her friend Rabin, still in a locked room that she can't find the keys for. As it turns out, Jack has been keeping the keys to the individual rooms of the house on an upper shelf in a vase, and Alana never saw those keys get put in the vase, so she has no idea that they're in there. So she's making a mad dash through the house, trying to find all the different keychains that are around, trying to unlock the door that Rabin is in, and she's not able to find the key. She starts to cry a little bit, but then we hear a car pull up outside. Oh, no. First, we hear the 1 hour alarm on Jack's watch go off. So the 1 hour has gone by, so something is going to happen. We don't know what. And then literally right after the alarm stops on his watch, we hear a car pull up outside. Alana runs to the window to see who pulls up, thinking that hopefully it could be help or something. But nope, it's a woman carrying grocery bags walking into the house just like nothing's ever happened. So at this point, we're wondering, is the wife in on it? Was Jack doing this behind her back and she's about to find out some fucked up shit? Or is she in on it? Blah, blah, blah. What we find out is that, yes, this is Mumi. This is the woman who called Jack earlier, right before he set the 1 hour timer. So obviously he set a 1 hour timer to say that, his wife was coming home. And I say wife. I mean, we get no confirmation that they're husband, wife, whatever. I mean, they're together. They're definitely in a relationship because the screen on his phone has a picture of them in an embrace. So they're definitely in a relationship. I'm just going to call Mumi his wife for the rest of the movie, just for sake of this walkthrough. So Mumi comes home and she's not carrying groceries. She's actually carrying takeout food. She's got like burgers and fries and sodas and whatnot with her. And she's calling out to Jack. This is where we find out that the kidnapper's name is Jack. She's calling out to him, Jack, where are you? All through the house. She can't find him. And then she decides to go upstairs to see, to find him and to make sure that the kid that their current victim is still chained up in that room. Now, this is a great decision by Alana. At this point, while Mumi is upstairs checking on the kidnap victim, she moves the body, because don't forget, she killed, or should I say, Jack died on the kitchen floor when he sat up and sat right into the knife. So he's on the kitchen floor. Mumi at this point obviously has not gone into the kitchen. So we're still on the fence as to whether she's in on this or not. Alana decides to move the fucking body. She literally, and this is like, again, a 10, 11-year-old girl. She drags the body out of the kitchen by her feet, takes it outside to like almost like a spot outside that's just outside of window view. And then she starts not burying the body, but putting like sticks and twigs and leaves and any other debris that she can find. She puts it on top of Jack's dead body to hide the body. So, kudos to Alana. At this point, Alana goes back into the house to see if she can, continue her search for the right keys to let Rabin out of the room. And Mumi decides to call Jack, of course. And this is where I'm like, see, you shouldn't have left the phone on him. You should have like destroyed it, or at the very least turned the ringer off and hid it somewhere. I don't know. Again, she's a kid. She doesn't have that kind of wherewithal, so it's fine. Anyway, Mumi calls Jack, and then she hears his phone ringing outside. So she goes outside and she finds Jack's body. The knife is still in his midsection. Alana never pulled the knife back out and kept it, which kind of bothered me. But again, it's a child. But yeah, Mumi finds the body. She comes back into the house and she has a little bit of a temper tantrum where she starts throwing shit around. But then finally she grabs an axe. And this is where we finally get the confirmation that, yes, she is definitely in on this, because she grabs an axe with the intention of going upstairs to take care of Rabin. Now, they end up Alana and Mumi, eventually they do find each other. They have multiple confrontations, one trying to outdo the other. This was all before Mumi actually had an axe in her hand. So finally, she chases Alana upstairs. Oh, and mind you, during all this, while the events of all this are occurring, Alana does find a telephone, like a landline in the house. It's not plugged in. Throughout the movie, we kind of see her with the phone, still looking for the plug to plug the phone in. She does eventually find the plug, and she ends up calling the police while Mumi is still upstairs, looking for Jack earlier. So the police are on the way. At this point, again, she finds Alana, chases her upstairs to that same master bedroom, and then Alana locks herself in the bathroom. And my friends, from here on, it's The Shining, because literally Mumi comes up and chops down the door, chops down that panel, just like The Shining, and literally looks through the door. My friends, I was fully expecting her to say something right there, like, here's Johnny, or just something stupid, Not that Alana would even catch the reference, because she's a 10-year-old girl in Indonesia, but I just, my cheesy brain, working on overdrive, I fully expected her to say something there, but she does not. But she does. And again, very similar to The Shining, after Mumi chops down the door, she sticks her hand through to try to unlock it. And again, credit to Alana, she stabs her in the hand, slices her hand open while she's trying to do that. Eventually, while this is all happening, the police arrive. Unfortunately, they send one police officer. He doesn't even have a partner. It's literally a single police officer. So when the police officer arrives and rings the doorbell, Mumi locks the bedroom. So the bedroom that Alana is hiding in, she locks it. Then she goes downstairs, turns on the television, and cranks the volume of the TV. Now, obviously, she does this in case Alana decides to start screaming and kicking and maybe breaking stuff, but it never happens. But I still appreciate the effort. The killer is looking out for her own well-being, turning on the volume really loud so that the cop can't hear Alana. So she answers the door. They have an exchange. Again, there's no dialogue in this movie, so we don't know what they say to each other. What we see is Mumi walk away from the door and go upstairs. She tells the police officer to wait there with like a hand gesture, and then she goes upstairs. Eventually, the police officer gets sick of waiting, and he walks into the house. When he realizes that the TV in the living room is cranked up, he grabs the remote and turns it off. Then he starts seeing signs of a struggle throughout the house, like stuff knocked over. So that's when he pulls out his weapon. He cocks his weapon, so he's prepared. He's ready to go. And then he decides to go upstairs to see if he can, find Mumi. Like, where did she go? Why did she leave me at the door? As he's walking up the stairs, Alana shows up. Alana, she was able to break a window in the bathroom that she was hiding of the master bathroom, get out the window, the broken window, and then go up to the ledge on the roof and jump down. She's injured mildly, like, she might twist her ankle or something. So she's on the ground for like maybe a minute, but then she does get up, goes back in the house through the front door that the cop went into, and ends up joining the cop just as he's walking up the stairs. The cop turns around and sees Alana crying and dirty and bloody, and he realizes, oh shit, there's something going on. Unfortunately, at this point, Mumi is at the top of the stairs with the axe, and she pulls a Jack Torrance on Scatman Crothers. More fucking Shining homages in this one. The one person who shows up to help takes an axe to the fucking belly, and that's exactly what happens. Yeah, Mumi ends up burying the axe into the belly of the cop. Like I said, in their infinite wisdom, they decided to send one cop. A little girl calling saying that she's been kidnapped, you'd think they would send multiple units. No, they send one fucking unit with one fucking cop. So I'm going to change the subject. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if there's one character that you can call an idiot, it's the cop, which I guess is a trope in itself, is sometimes in horror movies, an idiot cop or cops. So that's the one character I guess we can give criticism to, that once you're in the house and you start to see signs that, hey, something might be going on here, yeah, maybe I'll investigate, but not till after I at least call back up.
Yes, thank you. Get back up, you idiot. Stop trying to be a superhero. And that's what you get for trying to be a superhero. You get an axe to the belly. Ask Scatman Crothers. He'll tell you the same thing. Anyway, back to the film. Okay, so at this point, the cop is dead. And a chase ensues once again. Once again, Moomy is chasing Alana throughout the house. Alana ends up running upstairs. Moomy ends up giving chase, following upstairs. At this point, though, if you guys remember the vase up on a high shelf where they were hiding the keys to the doors in the house, Alana grabs that vase, not knowing that the keys are inside, mind you. And as Moomy is walking up the stairs, Alana smashes it on her fucking head, knocking her out, and she goes falling down the stairs. And then she looks on the floor and she's like, oh shit, there's a set of keys that I didn't know about. So she ends up finding the keys completely by accident. She is able to get into the room that Rabin is being held in. Unfortunately, he is chained to the wall by his feet. He's got a shackle on one of his feet, and he is chained to the wall. The kids try to, pull it out as best they could, figuring that they have all the time in the world now. I don't know if Alana thought that Moomy was dead just by smashing a vase on her head and having her fall down the stairs, but she's trying to do what she can. Then she remembers that Jack had a chainsaw that he chopped up that kid's body with. So she ends up going back to that room, grabbing the chainsaw, which is an adorable chainsaw, by the way. This is the most adorable. It's not like it's pink and has Hello Kitty stickers on it or anything, but it's the smallest chainsaw I've ever seen, and it's like bright green. It looks like a novelty that you would buy at like a horror collectible shop, But there it is. She grabs the world's most adorable chainsaw, and she is able to get Rabin's chain broken with the chainsaw. They end up getting up, walking out, but then when they get to the stairs, Alana freezes. And why does she freeze? Because Moomy's body is gone. She's not at the base of the stairs where she left her. She's now out somewhere. Eventually, Moomy does find the kids, and again, we get multiple chase sequences. At this point, Moomy has hurt her leg, so she's literally limping with an axe in her hand. I mean, it's fucking Jack Torrance. It might as well be Jacqueline Torrance. I mean, it's almost a carbon copy, which, things like that I might rail against sometimes, but I love how it was used here, so I'm very okay. Since they weren't ultra heavy-handed with the homage, since there's no dialogue, there's no way to be heavy-handed with the homage. It's you either notice it or you don't notice it. And if you don't notice it, it doesn't bring down the movie at all. But if you do notice it and you are a Shining fan, then yeah, it brings it up a little bit. So anyway, like I said, at this point we're in the garage, or should I say we're outside of the house. The kids do end up getting out of the house, but in the course of them escaping, Alana steps on a piece of broken glass, cutting her foot open. And this is when we see that both kids don't have their shoes on. They're both, barefoot. Alana remembers that their shoes are still in the car, the original car that they were kidnapped in. So she goes back into the garage through the little opening because, the garage door is still chained closed, but there's still enough space for a child to get through. So she gets in, and then Rabin follows her in there. They get their shoes back, and then they realize that there's a bike, that their bike is right there in the garage, the bike that they originally rode to the arcade. Apparently, the kidnapper took the bike, too, just to get rid of any evidence. Smart. So they try to use a crowbar. They use a crowbar to break into the car so that they can get their shoes back on. So now they've got their shoes on. And they use the crowbar to try to break the padlock on the chain that's closed, that's keeping the garage door chain shut. Unfortunately, they're unable to do it. But in the course of doing that, they make enough noise that Moomy comes out of the house and realizes that they're in the garage. So she then limps her ass over, very Jack Torrance-like, and uses the axe to break the padlock, which she does successfully. She's able to get into the garage. She ends up walking around the right side of the car to look for the kids. And then we see the kids walk around the opposite side of the car with the bike. They run out of the garage and they get on the bike, figuring that once they get on the bike, they're going to be fast enough to get away from this woman because she's limping. She's not even, walking fully. Unfortunately, and once again, fucking smart serial killer, he disconnected the chain off the bike before he put it in his garage. So maybe when he pulled it out of the car, he pulled the chain off of it. He left the chain on the bike. It's not like he completely removed the assembly, but he disconnected the chain. So when the kids got on the bike and tried to pedal away, they couldn't get away. The bike wasn't moving. And they realized that Moomy was catching up, so they get off the bike, which starts a whole new chase sequence now of, Moomy chasing them around the woods a little bit. They end up circling back around, back to where the bike is. At one point, they end up... oh, wait, that's later. Hold on. So Moomy is, basically chasing them still around this car. Eventually, they're able to get away from her a little bit, and Rabin is acting as a lookout, making sure that Moomy's not on her way, and Alana is working on the bike chain, trying to get the chain back on the gear on the bike so that they can pedal their asses out of there. Eventually, she is able to get the chain back on the bike. Unfortunately, Moomy shows up at that exact moment, and they walk away. They run away on foot. We get yet another chase sequence where now Moomy is in her truck. At this point, she decides to get in her car and give chase against the kids who are running away, blah, blah, blah. Oh, at this point, the kids are on the bike. That's right. Alana did get the chain back on the bike. They get on the bike and they pedal their asses away. Unfortunately, Moomy has her car keys with her, so she gets in her truck and gives chase. They end up... I'm trying to think of how this chase went. They end up being chased around. Oh, right. Basically, Moomy just chases them in the woods for pretty much the remainder of the evening, because literally what we see is the kids running away through different parts of the woods. They eventually get to like a small river or a creek, and they're kind of trying to hide there from her. Eventually, the sun is completely out. It's morning, and the kids are, out in the open, and they're just trying to figure out their way to how to get out of there. Unfortunately, as they're running away, they're not running away from anything specifically. It's not like Moomy is in the background. They're just running, trying to find civilization. Unfortunately, Rabin gets his foot stuck under a couple of boulders. They're walking around like a very shallow river, like a creek type thing, and he gets his foot stuck in under a couple of boulders. Now, Alana goes back to try to help him get out, and then what they don't notice is Moomy comes out of the woods and starts slowly approaching them. Again, axe in hand, very prominent limp, awesome Jack Torrance reference. She doesn't say anything, so she's not letting the kids know that she's there. She's slowly approaching the kids. And then finally, of course, as in with every movie, she lifts up the axe, and as she's about to bring it down, Rabin gets his foot out from under the boulder. And then, she takes another couple of swings and misses, but then finally she gets the kids in a position where they're both on the ground in the prone position, very vulnerable. She's standing up above them. She lifts up the axe, ready to bring it down on Alana, and then we hear a single gunshot. Boom. We see Moomy fall down, and then the camera pans out to show that more police officers have shown up. So finally, after however many hours of that first cop going missing and not answering his radio, they finally sent back up, and literally in the nick of time, they're able to save Alana and Rabin. Alana and Rabin end up okay, and our movie fades to black, and that is Monster 2024, my friends. Technically 2023 in Indonesia, but just got released last week in the States, so 2024 for us. And I did not give this movie nearly as much justice with that walkthrough, because, like I said, this movie is a sheer masterclass in tension and atmosphere. And like I said, I can't rave enough about it. I absolutely loved it. And I am very cognizant of the fact that this movie is not for everyone. It's not going to make everyone happy. But, if you like slow burns, if you like incredibly atmospheric, intense films, then I can't recommend this one enough. It's on Netflix. It's a damn hour and 26 minutes long. No excuse not to watch this one, my friends. check it out. If you're looking for just a good, solid, serial killer slash, kidnapping ring conspiracy. And like I said, what these two were doing and what their motivation is completely up to you. By the end of the movie, I started to think that maybe they were providing multiple services, like they were a multifaceted crime ring, because we've got the bedroom with the camera in it that had no blood in it. So they're not filming somebody killing little kids in that bedroom. They're filming something else happening to those kids in that bedroom. So I'm thinking that they offer some kind of service where the rich scumbags of the world can come out to that house and have their way with the child on camera, and then they do whatever they got to do with the kid. Obviously, if the pedophile himself wants to kill the kid, then they probably let him kill the kid, but otherwise they dispose the kid themselves. So like I said, there are so many clues throughout this movie. It's the sex trade, it's organ harvesting, it's pedophilia. I mean, like I said, and none of them are wrong. Whatever conclusion you as the viewer come up with, go with it. That's the right conclusion.
Yeah.
Ultimately, Jack and Mooney are scumbag criminals, and they deserve exactly what they get. So in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter what their motivation was. They're now dead, and they're never going to hurt any more children. So rock on.
For all we know, it could be all of the above, too. Like,
yeah, I was even thinking like cannibalism. I was thinking maybe when they sent the cooler with the body parts out, that the biker maybe was a cannibal. Like I said, we never get any explanation of who the biker is. He never takes his helmet off, so we don't get to see a face. He just shows up, drops off an empty cooler, shows up later, takes the cooler filled with body parts and an envelope of money, and disappears, and we never see him again. So there's obviously a bigger ring going on here, but these two, like Mike said, these two are probably like the first line of defense, for this ring, this organized crime ring. So, yep.
All right, cool. That is Monster. Check it out on Netflix. And yeah, it seems like we all enjoyed it to varying degrees, at least. So, with that said, let's see where else we can be heard. Venom, do you have anything new since we last recorded?
I actually do. Big surprise. Yes. Creature Comforts episode number 26 is now available as you listen to this episode. I just submitted the episode last night to our network head. So as you guys hear this one, that one will be available. And on that episode, we do our tribute to Roger Corman. It's not a big tribute because, we don't really do big episodes on Creature Comforts, but we do have a quick discussion on his influence and some of our favorite movies and how we discovered them, things like that. And then we do a feature review of the 1959 Roger Corman creature feature classic, The Wasp Woman, which was a damn good time. And a fairly quick episode, too. I think the episode ended up clocking in at under 1 hour. So, like I said, that one's available as you listen to this. The main show, No More Room in Hell, I think we're up to episode 59 or 60, did get postponed one more time. We're hoping that we can get that one in this upcoming weekend, and we're going to be looking at Derek's picks on that one. And the whole family will be together for that episode because our friend right here, Mr. Don Anelli, will be joining us for that one. So we'll have the whole No More Room in Hell family together for that episode. So fingers crossed that we can get that one done this weekend so we can get that out. Otherwise, that's all I have. No other guest spots to report, and just the Creature Comforts.
All right. How about you, Don? What do you got?
Yeah, as Venom mentioned, our Corman tribute is, I'll go off him if he says it's submitted and ready to go. Fun time. A lot of big Corman memories and fun time there. Looking forward to getting the main show done, which if I'm president, that should probably give you an idea of what they're about, but we'll just leave that one until the time comes for it to be out. My guest spot on the No Bodies podcast is still out there. It's discussion on religious horror. I believe it's part 1. I still haven't gotten to it yet. It's been a while since I've been able to clear out my feed, so it's still out there. I don't remember where they split it up, if it's 2 parts or not, but I think it's a part 1. I'm not sure, just based off of what I know of them beforehand. So I think they split it into 2, but I'm not sure. But yeah, fun time going over tons of religious horror topics, and go ahead and find that, like I said, on the No Bodies podcast, pretty much wherever you find shows. It's 2 words, so you should be able to pick it up no problem. This is the off week of Horror Countdown, so we'll be back next week with a new episode. Last one is my look at the most hated characters in the genre. So it took me about 90-ish episodes, but we finally got a negative. So pretty fun time there. And can go ahead and finally announce this, but I managed to tack on another little feather in my cap and managed to get a short story published. I've known about it for a few weeks, but I didn't know when it was going to go live. So I never, again, it's one of those, I keep putting it off until they mention it. So I've known about it for about a week and a half, but I didn't know when it was going to go live, but it's finally live. And it's published on the Horror Tree. So it's horrortree.com. It should be one of the featured articles, but if you search for me or the title of the story, you should be able to find it. It's called Scream for the Holidays. So coming should be just right around the corner for Christmas in July, or just for whatever. But yeah, my first published short story should be out there wherever like I said, just wherever the website is. So go ahead and give that a listen. Go ahead and give that a read, and hope you enjoy it, because I definitely plan on doing more. So yeah, other than that, back to you.
All right,
Remember us
cool.
when you're famous.
Yeah. I was going to say, congratulations on that, Dom. Big achievement. Yeah. As far as I go, nothing new recorded. I am taking part in Duncan's this is like an off year for the summer series, but he is doing like the horror head-to-head thing. So more details are coming out about that. Hasn't been recorded yet, though, so nothing new. And other than that, yeah, no guest spots for me. In talks to do different things, but it's just a matter of scheduling. That's how life goes. As far as the next episode of Fresh Cut, so I know I am going to a sneak. It's not really a sneak preview. It's just more like an advanced screening of In a Violent Nature on Wednesday. Does it open like regularly Friday, Venom?
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
Okay,
That's
so
our
I'm
next
basically
episode.
just seeing it like 2 days early on the week it's opening wide anyway.
1 day early.
So
because I'll be seeing it Thursday, so you're seeing it 1 day early.
Okay, sure, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, which makes it cooler because with this holiday weekend, that means like by the time I start work tomorrow, it's like 1 day closer already to it, which is cool. So yeah, that'll probably be the next episode, my guess. We never 100% lock things in, but it's pretty safe to say, unless circumstances take us away from doing it for whatever reason, I'm pretty sure that's what we're doing next episode.
Hell yeah. A 90-minute slasher that's actually getting some good festival buzz. Damn right, that's our priority.
Cool. All right. Well, that said, I have a grill or some coals on the grill to go start, so we're going to get out of here. Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Fresh Cuts. We'll be back in about a week with another one. Let's say bye to our listeners.
Later.
I'm by myself, so I think I'm going to order some takeout barbecue. Take care, folks.
Yeah, what are axes for in a horror movie other than chopping down a panel on the bathroom door, right?
Hell yeah.
Peace.
Here's Venom.